One of the things I think is interesting is oftentimes we think of change in sort of this bungee jumping kind of way. And yet for 90% of the population, we don't think of it in those terms. It's just scary.
This is Entrepreneurs the Playbook, where I give you access each week to the world's greatest athletes and executives about their personal and professional playbook and what has made them champions on and off the field. This is the Playbook. This is Dave Meltzer, CEO of Sports One Marketing, and I'm here with Entrepreneur the Playbook. And I am with a new friend of mine that we met in Atlanta on a panel, Whitney Johnson. And thank you for having such a simple name, because one of the most notable things about me as I'm building my brand is I am the name butcher.
Are you?
I don't know what happens to me. I had Cameron Colvin on, and that was an easy name.
Yeah.
After like Akbar Biajamela, I still can't get his name right.
Right.
And sure enough, I called him Colvin something.
You got the name wrong.
Colvert. So thank you, Whitney, for
You're
having
welcome.
such a simple
well,
name.
let's hope you mess up my name too.
I'm not going to do it.
So
Johnson's
you could be the name
easy.
butcher, right?
I'm going to be branded the name butcher. Yeah. And I don't mean, I had a Jared tell me it's Jaden, and I said, I am so sorry. I started doing much more business coaching now, which I know you're a business coach.
I am.
And we're both kind of honored and trained by the same individual. Tell me, let's start there with business coaching, because it's kind of an odd profession.
It is an odd profession.
You know, and I'm going to ask you a simple question to start.
Okay.
Do you like business coaching?
I do.
And what is it you like?
So this is the funny thing. I like it, but I didn't think I liked it. In fact, I didn't want to do it because I thought, coaching, like who does coaching? Like people who coach are people who can't do. And so
I love that.
And so I really, really dismissed it. And so I guess, should I tell you a little bit of my background, why I dismissed it?
Well, first of all, your accolades are huge.
Okay.
Yeah, give me a little bit of background.
Okay.
Perfect.
So I think part of the reason I dismissed it is that I grew up, graduated from college, get to Wall Street, and I think, actually there's more to the story.
Yeah,
but
give me more, go ahead.
Give me more. Okay, so I grew up, I studied music. In high school, I'm a cheerleader. And
wait, a cheerleader that's in the band? Or what kind of?
No, I didn't play in the band. I just played piano on the side.
Hard to play piano in the band. Right?
So like to me, that was the thing. Like I was going to be a cheerleader. So then I go to college and I major in music. But then I get to New York and I discover, I get to New York, I have to get a job. My husband's in school. The best job I can get is as a secretary. Because, I'm a girl. I'm a music major. Like, of course, I'm going to be the working girl. So I then I'm thinking, all right, well, now what I'm going to do? So I'm able to work my way up by taking business classes at night, move into being an investment banker. And so for me, you were a master of the universe if you were an investment banker, if you were doing deals, if you were investing. You're not the person coaching. And yet, the thing is that, and maybe it goes back to my being a cheerleader early on, I am really good at coaching. I really like coaching. And so I had this, I guess, a little bit of an aha a few years ago where people kept asking me to coach over and over and over again. I'm like, oh, no, that's just a thing I do on the side.
Right.
And then finally people said, no, I want to pay you to coach.
That's interesting.
Right, and then after the last couple of years, then you started to refer to a mentor of ours, Marshall Goldsmith, and he has just really helped me learn how to coach, helped me see how valuable, I can be as a coach. And so now I have, I do occasionally strategic strategy lab type works with CEOs, but I more typically coach them for a year at a time, and I love doing it.
It's amazing because I'm a doer like you, and I've had a varied career like yours, and through the laws of attraction, we were kind of on separate sides of a panel, and I'm like, I'm just so attracted to this person. She's so interesting. Every time you answered, my vibration went up, and I'm like, I really understand what she's talking about. And
I didn't know that. Thank you for telling me that.
Well, it's true. And you have disruptive innovation and personal disruption, and the best-selling author of Disrupt Yourself, putting the power of disruptive innovation to work. Now, the word innovation to me is interesting because when you look at your business coaching philosophy, you started by saying kind of it's an innovation-based thing, it's an idea-based thing, and you had your own preset perceptions and ideas. But what really, I think, turned the corner for both of us was a direct path to revenue, monetizing, like someone has value. And in fact, when I business coach, although I am kind of woo-woo and spiritual, I deal with the subconscious belief and also unconscious energy. My criteria and what I learn to coach with is, hey, I want you to double the amount of money that you make because I'm working with you.
So that's what you use.
Like exactly. I want quantitatively within a month, I want you to look and say, because I'm not cheap, I want you to say there's no doubt in my mind that in the next year, it's going to be at least 10 times as much money as he's charging me. And I actually, that's my litmus test. It has to be monetarily based. And you're a Wall Street person. Where to you, and as an innovation, a disruptive innovator, all of the things that you teach, a personal disruptive person, where do you tie in people understanding a direct path to revenue in their happiness? Because it creates this disruption. I think there's a huge conflict in most human beings that they don't understand that you can take great joy in making a ton of money.
Oh my goodness, I cannot believe we are having this conversation.
We are, it's here. It's the playbook, that's what it's about. And do you
want to know why I can't believe we're having this conversation? Because this is the very thing, not less than an hour ago, I was trying to think through.
Really?
For me personally.
And what questions came up when you're trying to think through it?
So I'm here actually in California. I'm at a Bob Proctor seminar because I heard
Another
him
mentor.
speak on the same panel that you and I were on, and I just started reading and studying what he was saying and doing and thought, this is really interesting because I focus on change as well. So the big question that I'm having right now is I am very religious, very spiritual. There are things that I feel like are super important. In fact, the most important thing that I can do, one of which is to be a good person and to be devout and believe in God. So I've got that goal. So then I say to myself, all right, so I'm listening to this idea of visualization and saying, all right, what financial goal do I want to set for myself? What intention do I want to set? And is it big, and is it big enough? The question that I start to ask myself is, am I not being true to my sense of devotion to my God when I'm thinking about having this financial goal? And that is something that I have been trying to sort through. So if you have an answer, share it, and everybody else will get to hear our therapy session live.
As you joked with me, you woke up at 4 o'clock, and you know that I meditate every morning at 4, and I've studied in India, and here's what I've come up with, because I also, most people wouldn't know that I believe in a higher source. And unfortunately, because of my non-partisan, try to middle the road it, my brother's a famous rabbi. I grew up very Jewish.
He is.
Yeah, and went to Harvard, biochem major, just extraordinary intellect. But I believe in a higher source. I believe in the truth.
You call it source and goodness, right?
Yeah.
Okay. In your book.
I don't mind calling it God either, but I want people, everybody believes in goodness. Everybody believes in a source. So I don't want to leave anyone out.
Right.
I don't care if you believe in God, Buddha, Muhammad, Joseph Smith, I don't care. I believe in a truth. And so what really helped me to resolve this conflict, because I spent years with this exact conflict, because I came up with a saying that this truth, this idea of money, is just a potential. Money itself is an energy, and it's an abundance that God or goodness or any higher source would want me to live to my potential of creating as much abundance as I could, because I believe there's enough of everything for everyone. And so my enjoyment was now based off of not making money or taking money, but shifting the paradigm, which is Bob Proctor's concept, but of waking up every morning asking God to put 10 people in front of me that I can help, to shift the paradigm of value, that every single thing that I did, I was providing value, meaning that I was in an enjoyment of the consistent, which means as much as I can, persistent without quit, enjoyment of the pursuit of my potential, the truth. And so there's this truth of economics that I'm in pursuit of. There's also a truth of the relationships I have, and they're individual, from being a son to a father to a husband, all the great community person. I have philanthropic pursuits.
Right.
And when I reconciled the truth with money, with economics, and the truth about money that is very simple that I came up with that really filled my heart with purpose was that simply, I can't give what I don't have. So if I'm truly selfless and unconditional, no judgments or conditions, that and this is obviously the epitome, I work and pursue this.
Right.
I'm human, right? And
Exactly.
my biggest joke.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I have 3 teenage daughters.
Yeah.
So my biggest joke is, because I love Saint, Mother Teresa and all these saints, right? And I'm looking at these perfect lives, I go, if they had 3 teenage daughters, there's no way there'd be a Saint Teresa or a Mother Teresa. There'd be no saints in the world if they had 3. So I pursue to be the best father in that respect. So if you can reconcile the fact that, wow, abundance is something that I can create in this vibration, is separate, the truth vibrates the fastest. That's why it always comes out. But in this pragmatic world that we live in, that if we can create as much abundance, you can actually, I think, transfer the inspiration that we take from God or goodness or source, whatever you say, and implant it into our pursuit of as much money that we can have.
Well, and when you're saying that, the thought that came to me is that one would, or certainly I would never say, well, it's only okay if I have so much education. Right?
Right.
You wouldn't say that. Like,
I'll limit myself to this much because it'll hurt someone else.
Right. If I get more than a high school diploma, then I'm being bad.
Or greedy.
You would never do
or
that.
Scarce.
Right? You would never do that. Ever. So there's something, so I think what you're saying is, if you set an intention of like, okay, I want to, in fact, I'm just going to say it out loud. This is what's interesting, is I set this intention before I came here, is I was like, okay, I'm going to generate $20 million of revenue within the next 5 years. But I will tell you something. As I was sitting downstairs, I was like, is $20 million big enough?
Yeah.
I was like, is that really big enough? So then you say, okay, is that a bad thing? I don't think it is. Now I'm thinking, no, it's not a bad thing, because the one thing that I think is fascinating is that the more education you have, the more experiences you have, the more, I think you talk a lot about lived experience, is that right?
Yep.
The more lived experience you have, the more financial resources you have, the more good that you can do.
No doubt.
And so, and part of what I think is good about these like tangible goals of education or financial well-being is that they galvanize your mind in a way that saying I want to be good doesn't so much. But that being said, I really loved that you said that you wake up every morning and say, please put in front of me 10 people I can serve today. At least 10 people.
I'm very careful with my words. So for example, I used to set goals. I want to be a millionaire by this time.
Right.
I want to have $100 million by this time. And what I learned about the universe, and Bob helped me learn this as well, and Wayne Dyer, some other great mentors, but I believe that time, relativity, right? So time in exact amounts creates shortages, voids, and resistance. And it limits us. So I think that by saying in the next 5 years, number one, that creates a limit. Because why would it take 5 years? If we were limitless and abundant, why should it take you 5 years? And two, why is it not at least 20 million? So where I started shifting in the last few years, my objectives or intentions, and I use an exponential power of intention, meaning consistent, persistent. I believe you do something every day without missing. The minute you miss, I'll get to that part, but I will limit the 20 million by simply saying, I want to double the amount of money that I make as fast as I can. Feel the energy difference.
Yeah.
Right? I want to double the amount of money I make as fast as I can.
Right.
There's no limit to it.
It's super.
And then when I reach that, I'm like, cool, I want to double it again as fast as I can. So even early on, we had a conversation, I talked about doubling.
Yeah.
And that changed. And then things, you get into a flood of favor from God, and things, you're like, oh my gosh. I use an example in football. The winning coach for the Philadelphia Eagles, Peterson.
Yeah.
I've been in football for years. It's my passion, my partner, right, Hall of Fame quarterbacks, things like that. Well, I thought to myself when he won the Super Bowl, I said, God, if I ran into him like I run into tons of coaches 9 years ago when he was a high school football coach, and I would have run into him and he said, Mr. Meltzer, I really want to be a NFL football coach. In fact, in the next decade, I want to win the Super Bowl and beat Bill Belichick as a high school coach.
Right.
Now, I'm not a limiting belief guy. I coach people about what we're talking about. I would have walked away doubting him.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would have put conditions, but yet it happened. And there's so many things in the world that happen that we can't conceive, and we put these limits by rationalizing, well, that's fair, it'd be too greedy, or whatever you're doing to yourself with your 20 million. Like, I have to just tell you, energetically, I was sad for you when you came up with the 20 million over 5 years. Because I look at you in a different light. I'm like, oh, she probably wants to do $1 billion in 5 years.
Isn't that interesting?
Right, that's the way I thought you were gonna say $1 billion in 5 years. And you said 20 million, and I'm thinking, that's a monthly deal. Like, she has so much unlided
That's
potential.
Interesting. And now that makes me sad.
No, that makes you
my
sad.
Goodness.
It's excite you that you can do it.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And I love that what you said is this idea of doubling
as fast as you can.
As fast as you can. That's so exciting.
And
'Cause
everything
it's
will
like,
come
okay,
to
let
me.
me just run, and I'm going to run as fast as I can and push myself.
Well, that leads to, obviously, a lot of times things don't work out the way we want it to work out. And you started as a secretary, and
Right.
obviously frustrated, and I hate that word, so tell me.
Oh, you can
Give
say
me an
tell me.
example. Give me an example of, a time in your life where you weren't this great Whitney Johnson, the queen of disruption, and believing in yourself in all of these
Right.
areas, that something happened to you to shift your paradigm and say, wait a second, should I
Yes.
continue on? Did you have any of those moments?
Yeah. Oh, should I continue on?
Or just anything that challenged you, that you were just in disbelief, like, wow, I'm doing here was my dilemma.
Okay.
I'm doing all the right things.
Right.
Why is this happening to me?
Right.
The hits keep coming.
Right.
And I've always been a good person, but the truth was, in retrospect,
Yeah.
I wasn't doing the right things.
Yeah.
I surrounded myself with the wrong people, the wrong ideas. I was lying to myself. I was living in an ego-based world of inferiority, superior, separateness, need to be
Right.
offended, need to be right. I can go through the list of ego that I had, but at the
Oh, let's
time,
go on.
I was a victim. I was
Yes.
blame, shame, and
Yeah.
justification.
Yeah.
Did you ever feel that way?
Yeah, of course. I mean, who doesn't? I think for me, I would say, I don't know that I've had, if I look at the arc of your story and your career, you
It's a roller coaster.
well, you're, Horatio Alger, then you move up, and then you have this period of, and then you're up here again.
At least it's not the myth of Sisyphus. Then
No,
it'd be
it's
really
not.
tragic.
Yeah, Sisyphus would be a
I
problem.
would have taken it again every day.
I mean, so I guess I think one thing I would say is that, I've had situations where I've been fired, and being fired, for anybody who's been fired, it's one of those situations where you feel devastated, you feel betrayed, you feel like, what? And it really causes you to call a lot of things into question, because initially there's a whole lot of blame that goes on.
Rejection and blame.
You feel rejection, you feel betrayed, you blame. And then I remember one day I said, I need to sit down and write, make a list of all the things that have happened, that I have learned, that I'm thankful for because this happened. And it was like 50 things. I mean, it was this.
And the worst thing that you thought happened to you is probably one of the best things.
Exactly. And that's the amazing part, is that every time, one of my 7 points of disruption is to give failure its due. And so when I do my keynotes, I'll talk about how I've been fired, how I've bombed speeches in front of hundreds of people and they hated it. And I talk about how I've backed businesses financially that have imploded. And yet the idea is that, whenever something like that happens, almost always people say, well, I talk about, you have to, whether you see an experience as a failure or success, it's a choice. And almost every time, every time, when someone's been fired, they're like, best thing that ever happened to me.
Yeah, my best example of that is one of our first employees.
Yeah.
Because we were growing as a company, we hired the wrong person. So I had to bring her in, and I adored her and said, I'm accountable, I hired the wrong person, this isn't the right job for you. In tears, she was in her 20s, and as her life progressed, she actually asked me to officiate her wedding.
Wow.
And I will tell you that she did not like me that day I fired her. No matter what I said or tried to lay her down easy, I could see it in her face. It was blame, shame, justification, a lot of attacking thoughts that were going through her mind and probably her mouth when she got home. But as it evolved and I continued to bring value to her and stay in contact with her, it was, to me, one of the biggest accomplishments of my professional career, that I could transcend someone that I gave complete rejection to
Yeah.
would honor me. To me, that was a bucket list item.
Yeah, she
to
had to officiate
her wedding. Isn't that incredible?
That's incredible.
And then I thought at first when she called me, I made the joke. I said, you know that my brother's the rabbi, not me, right?
Right.
You got the wrong Meltzer here.
Yeah, exactly.
So last question, because we're running out of time, and we could do this again, and I would do this all day with you. So I'm interested in someone with such a diverse background, someone that has achieved so many things and still is searching for so many others. What legacy do you want to leave when it's all over?
Such a great question. When you ask
I told you there'd be no hard questions I like.
Right, I know. But when you ask that question, do you find that it brings people to tears?
A lot of times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Such a
Which
great
is
question.
cool, right?
Yeah, it's really great.
You're gonna bring me to tears, so don't worry.
Yeah.
You know who Gary Vee is?
Yeah.
So he's a friend of mine.
Yeah.
It's actually a mentor of mine. I always say, you know, the F-bomb works for Gary, like my tears work for me. It doesn't work unless I cry, so this is a good question.
Good, okay, gotcha. So I would say a few things. One is I want a legacy of having a good relationship with my husband and my children. And I'd say so far we're on the right path, and I'm really happy about that.
It's a huge achievement.
It's huge. It's huge because my parents didn't have a good marriage and they
Me too.
separated. And so for me to be able to say we've been married all these years, we love each other.
How many years have
and
you
we
been
like
married,
each other.
just to honor him?
31.
No, well, you got married when you're 10?
Yeah.
Oh my
we did.
gosh.
It was
Wow.
an arranged marriage. Just kidding.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Well, that's awesome.
So I would say that's one thing. I think another thing I would say is that I want to make it safe for people to change, because I think that, you know, we can talk a lot about the importance of change and how we want to change, but and one of the things I think is interesting is oftentimes we think of change in sort of this bungee jumping kind of way, and yet for 90% of the population we don't think of it in those terms. It's just scary.
Yeah.
It's just scary for us. And so
I'm a freshman in college, so
you're a freshman.
I said I have a freshman, my oldest daughter.
Yeah.
And I had to tell her the other day, I said, just so you know, I only know one type of person that likes change, and that's a wet baby. That's the only type of person I've ever seen that likes change.
Exactly. That's hilarious. I've never heard that before. I might use that one. And so I feel like if the work that I do around personal disruption provides people a structure for how to do that, then that's a good legacy. And I think the last legacy I would say is that I want to do good and leave the people that knew me and the people around me better because they knew me.
Well, I feel that way, and I feel blessed that you took the time to be with me. I'm sure we'll keep evolving our relationship because, like I said, I just am heavily attracted to your vibration and what you believe in, and I really, anything I can do to be of service, I really appreciate it. And most of all, that I can pronounce your name. This would be the first playbook that I've done out of 28 or whatever that now I can say Whitney Johnson here with me, unbelievable author, speaker, business coach, and humanitarian. Thank you so much for being on Entrepreneur, the Playbook.